Thank you very much, Dylan. It all comes down to this. Game number 3 in just a couple short minutes. One of these team seasons will be ending for 2022, which is always a sad thing, but for both of these teams, they're not worried about that. They're worried about what to do to get that win, to make sure that that is not the case for them. VESPA looked very strong. They had the team fighting. Go-To looked really good in terms of opening up the map in the early game. And for Buffalo, this is interesting. The first real test of adversity that I think they've seen all season.
You think about what Vespa's been able to accomplish. We talked about this right as the game had started, right before we kicked off into our first draft, which is that Vespa came from the Southern Conference, and they're a very deep conference. They had to overcome a lot of adversity between, UT Dallas being able to beat out a team that has a lot of experience inside of the collegiate scene, being able to contest with like UST, being able to contest with UT Austin as well, and taking games off of them. They understand how to game plan and take losses and things like that. And Buffalo hasn't had to show that all that much this season. So this is a really good testament to how the longevity of Buffalo looks when they're trying to come up with new strategies to work against better teams or teams that are at a higher caliber. Because again, we saw them play against ESC teams. ESC teams are very good in their own right, but Buffalo wasn't tested like that. They lost one game all split, and it was in a series that didn't really matter all that much. So now, tournament lives on the line, backs against the wall. They swap sides. Let's see what they've got in their back pocket. Let's see what they've got to prepare themselves in a game like this up against VESPA, who have now pushed them 2 games in a row inside of some of the team fighting, some of the things that we thought that was going to be really comfortable for Buffalo.
Yeah, and I think for the most part, for those first 2 games, we saw very similar team compositions from UBuffalo in each of them. You see Emprisonner on a Bruiser, whether it be Aatrox or the set, Derty on the Lilia to try and push the tempo, Canas on the Corki to force that late game scaling, and then a solid bot lane in Kyriu and Nyeong. Interested to see if that's kind of the angle that they still want to take. Of course, now that the sides are swapped, they will be on blue side, which means that they might have some early priority around some of those pocket picks, some things that they were banning away maybe on that first rotation. That Tryndamere comes to mind right off the bat.
Yeah, a couple of things that you could note. Again, being able to go to more targeted bans as well doesn't give up the Jinx as quickly. So, in that last series, when you're banning away Rengar and Graves and Tryndamere every single rotation, you have to give Jinx, because Jinx is going to be the first pick that gets brought down by the other team. And they didn't seem to have a perfect response to it in either game. I don't think either bot lane that they had really did anything miraculous to kind of shut down what is the later scaling that Vespa's had in their bottom side at all. And so because of that, you have yourself in a position where, like, now on blue side, you might be the ones that get to pick up the Jinx for Kyriu. Maybe that's a ban that gets drawn out from Vespa. Maybe you get some of your other comfort. The other thing that stands out to me as well is I wanted to see Buffalo's solo lanes do a lot more. Their strategy seems to have been that Derty was going to be on a counter matchup into Go-To, which I don't think has turned out terribly for them. I really don't think that that's the case. But for the most part, I was expecting for Canas and Emprisonner to really kind of take up the mantle this series, to take up into Butterfan when Butterfan's playing tanks. FutureSelf being somebody that we thought that Canas was going to be able to do very well against inside the laning phase. And instead they picked double Corki for scaling in the mid lane for Canas, and kind of lane neutralizing picks. The Aatrox was really good, but like ultimately the Ornn didn't really get affected by having this set in the top lane. I kind of want to see them take more aggressive stuff, take up the ability to take over your own lane. I would love to see that from Buffalo here, from your very talented solo laners.
Yeah, and it's hard, especially towards the top side. I mean, these are picks that Emprisonner has been carrying on throughout the season. It's just Butterfan has done a pretty solid job at neutralizing on the Ornn.
Yes.
You pick it blind, and there's really not much that Buffalo can do about it, especially considering things like the Darius were banned away in that other game. A pick that maybe might serve as a bit more of a hard counter pick into something like the Ornn. It'll be interesting to see what Vespa want to do in terms of blind picking their top laner potentially once again. We do have that Rengar still open as we head into the last ban for Buffalo. Now that they're on blue side, let's see what they do.
And interestingly, I wonder, like, I cannot imagine a world in which they let Rengar through here on B3, and then they don't take it B1. Or, like, they ban 3, and then they don't take it B1. And so they're going to go back to the same thing. So, again, they're not punished here. So now Vespa has to make the decision of letting through what they've let through, and banned out in the last 2 games, or whether they actually ban the Jinx, which is at least a little bit of a thought. So, if you ban the Jinx, you don't really have anything to work with. Now, the banning of the Xayah, to me, it's Vespa reading maybe that they don't B1 Jinx on the side of Buffalo. Yeah. Because otherwise, why would you ban that? Because it's one of the better picks. Maybe Blamed One can't necessarily play it, and they're just terrified of that come through. But yeah, all you've done is take away one of the better responses to this champion.
And correct me if I'm wrong, Rebel, but I'm pretty sure even though the sides are swapped, these are still the same 6 bans across the line, just swapped on the opposite sides, which means that Buffalo just get the same opportunity that Vespa did in the first 2 games, which is that Jinx B1. There's a couple different responses that Kyriu tried to go with. We had the Senna in game number 1, and then also the Misfortune in game number 2. Both are champions that Blamed One can pick up, but maybe it's something different, like the Ezreal for a little bit more long range, or maybe a match with the Aphelios. It's very interesting to see what Blamed One will do now that he's forced onto a different champion.
this is you have to go for a bit of an earlier game ADC, and so I'm not shocked to see that the Misfortune, the Spellcaster, comes in. I would like to see lethality and more focus on being able to drop kind of damage in the beginning of the game, because that's the strength of the Misfortune. If they're going to do this, especially with an Ornn, this is where I'd like to really see the Viego, because then you have a bit more backbone to some of the consistent damage. Misfortune doesn't have that in lethality. Viego can bring that in spades and assistance. Not to mention, it plays directly into go-to, being this really big carry that we've been talking about for VESPA, something that we had a lot of faith in. And obviously one that Buffalo also had a lot of faith in, because they've been putting so much into Derty over the course of the series, and this is the composition that might necessitate it. This is where I would suspect that it could really come in clutch for VESPA if they need it.
Yeah, and that would be definitely a pickup that, you know, GoTo is pretty comfortable on in his own right, but we'll have to see what ends up going here. It would be a blind pickup here now that the Aatrox has been locked in on the B3. So instead, they're just going to finalize their bot lane and open up the jungle pools to some more bans.
And it's interesting now because with VESPA having picked a Misfortune and an Ornn, you have two things that are countered by the Braum shield. So you can think of this as, if they combine them, then Braum counters both at the same time. You could also think of it as, if you split them properly and you use the Braum shield to be able to counter the Ornn, to counter the bullet time, the other one can come out afterwards. It extends your team fight a little bit longer, especially when you want to put your pieces together very quickly. But what it does mean is that there is counterplay around the Braum having multiple tools that he wants to try to.
So there's a lot of different things. I think the Braum is obviously a very good pickup into the team comp that VESPA has set up. I said the same thing when Izumi was playing it in game number 2, just in terms of denying range, which has been a big storyline throughout this game. We haven't seen the Corkis locked in just yet, but still, you know, the Ornn for some long-range engage, the MF and the Jinx both have a decent range in their own right. So now as we head into the second phase of bans, it will be mid-lane targeted for the most part. Victor, Corki, and Viego are crucially taken away alongside that Volley Bear for GoTo.
And you can note that the two kind of more blanket picks, things that you go to blind more often than not, are taken away. The Victor for FutureSelf, which happened in game number 1, and then of course the Volley Bear in the same regard happened for Goto in game number 2. Don't want either of those to pop back up. So now it's a response. Do you pick mid lane here and wait to get Goto a better matchup, or do you pick something like Xin Zhao inside of the jungle? They go right to the Viego. That's what we like to see. This is what we kind of anticipate. To me, it opens up Derty potentially for a bit more counter matchup, because it's not something that's like super easy to run. You could have easily gone for a Xin Zhao and been a little bit more blanket, harder to counteract in that jungle position. But that's Goto putting faith in himself, the team putting faith in him to help be one of these massive carries for the team.
You're just a prophet today, Rebel. You got the MF pickup in game number 2, the Viego prediction in game number 3. I mean, the pick ban seems to just be going your way. Maybe the mind control working a little bit as we get into the rest of this draft. Sylas lock-in for Canas. I think earlier on we were talking about how a lot of these players that really like these control mages also always have a mean Sylas to pick up, and there's a ton of great ultimates on the VESPA side for Canas to try and steal away, and that is the Ornn for, the Olaf coming in for Derty, a champion that he is very comfortable on despite not being as much in the meta.
They have got a death ball composition, 3 bruisers, 3 high health receiving duelists, all of which that can they can lifesteal really effectively. The Kingslayer, all that Aatrox and Olaf are able to bring to get into the backline to challenge here. This is not my ideal situation unless you really want an assassin for the Jinx. I'm also not loving the Ryze necessarily. I know it's not bad in terms of the meta. You can do a lot of things and you have a lot of utility and wave control with it. But I do worry about what it's going to be able to do into this massive bruiser frontline that you're looking at against the Sylas, the Olaf, and the Aatrox when they just run at you. They don't have a go button, so they don't have like a Karma Mountra E. They don't have a Shirelia's user really anywhere in this composition, but they do at least have a lot of champions that like to run forward and start attacking at the point of contact to generate space for Kyriu behind them.
Which is a bit of a deviation from what we saw in the first 2 games. It seemed like VESPA was the one who wanted to push the aggression, go forward in both of the matchups that they ended up going on that blue side. But now Buffalo has the tools to just run in onto VESPA. And now VESPA is actually the team that has a decent amount of counter engage. You have a Ryze, you have a Viego with some of the resets that can come through, and of course Ornn, which is very good at that sort of re-engage, counter-engage measures that you have here. And a lot of wombo combo, a lot of team fighting. You might worry about some of the damage that can potentially be there for VESPA, especially towards the later stage of the game. Have to rely a lot on to GoTo as it continues to progress, but they do have the composition that kind of matches up against Buffalo. The only question is which side really ends up getting the advantage early on.
I think Canas has a lot of kind of agency in this one as well. He has the dive potential to get onto Blamed One in the right circumstance. He has the ability to go toe-to-toe with Goto inside of a game like this as well. Has the ability to steal the Ornn ultimates to be able to kind of generate their own momentum so that they get an Ornn ultimate into this big cluster of champions that are going to be running at you. They have ways to attack this. Blamed One does have ability with this bullet time because, of course, there's bulkiness behind like Olaf and Sylas and Aatrox, but none of them are going to be like 250, 300 armor champions that can't be shredded through, even with a lethality type build. So it's another composition for VESPA. Like you said, I think Goto has to do a little bit more of the heavy lifting, but snowballing for UBuffalo is going to be huge here. If you can get, Sylas on a good foot, you can get Aatrox onto a good foot, the Olaf taking over the beginning of the game, it's so much harder to skirmish, so much harder to teamfight, and to establish your kind of baseline that VESPA has been able to do over the last 2 games, at least a little bit. Game 1, it took them a minute to get there. That's why they looked competitive. Game 2, they got it done very, very quickly. In this game, it is about disrupting that structure, disrupting VESPA's ability to set up for what are standard teamfights, to set up for the resets from Goto, set up big ultimates coming through from the Misfortune or the Ornn to be able to set up a teamfight as well. That really push them out of the comfort zone that they need.
It's really interesting how the script has sort of flipped from the start of this series. We came in thinking that Buffalo was really the team that wanted to scale for late, play big team fighting compositions, but now it's VESPA with the Ornn, MF, Nautilus, Wombo combo team to try and match up against Buffalo, who have a little bit more agency to do things in the early stages. Now, maybe the sides have swapped, but the minds of the players swapped a little bit as well, but I think for both of these teams, it's really been back and forth both times. Both these games went over 30 minutes. It's not like there were stomps either way. And so I'm really excited to see how this ends up working, especially due to the change of playstyles that we were expecting.
Truly. And now also, I think the biggest one that we've been ignoring a little bit, as obviously we talked about Blaine 1 having a bit of ability to carry out a game. Now Kyriu gets that. Riku, previously known, I know at the beginning of the day we had talked about it a little bit, especially Dylan, who played inside of this region, knew how talented that they were. Now getting their hands on this massive carry champion, one of the better ADCs still inside of the meta, to be able to carry full team fights with, to the point where, like, this is also a challenge where it's like, it almost feels like there's a Jinx versus Viego combination here on both sides to try to get your reset character going faster. Whoever gets that done first is maybe the team that gets the momentum in a fight.
On to the Rift, game number 3. Winner goes on to the round of 16. Loser will go home. We received confirmation that Maryville did take that victory over Beloy in the other stream, which means that whoever takes this matchup will have a date with the Saints later on.
That's a tough one. But yeah, here's the thing.
It is.
Walking into a collegiate tournament, walking into this, you never expect to lose. And if you have to get dropped, getting dropped by the #1 team doesn't feel that bad, right? Like, it just doesn't feel that bad. Or getting dropped by the projected #1.
They're not number 1 just yet, Mr.
No bias here. No bias. Okay.
I think overall in this game, though, Rebel, as we have a little bit of time before, the jungle camps start to spawn, in terms of the advantages for both of these compositions, I kind of see it as a sort of parabola here, where Buffalo have the agency early on, but then as we get towards, then it goes more towards VESPA's favor, where they have this really strong mid-game team fighting comp, and then maybe towards some of the later stage of the game, some of the scaling for the Jinx and the Sylas maybe will be able to take over again.
It's a question of who the damage threat actually kind of favors for VESPA, because there's a very real situation where Goto gets it very quickly. There's a situation in which Blamed One gets a lot of the damage, and there's a question of when FutureSelf gets enough of the damage that they're able to work with. This is an initial engage. Like you said, though, the parabola, the initial arc, Olaf, very strong. Braum, very strong level 1. You're not testing that. You're never testing this. Yeah. You're given the blue buff, unfortunately. That's Goto who has to start on the Wolves, and it's a question of whether or not Derty wants to take this any further than just this. But this is now, I guess, the 3rd game in a row where like Derty has felt like he is the potential gap in the jungle position, which is an interesting attack angle, because we had thought that Goto was the person that was going to be able to carry. Again, Buffalo making that prediction as well and saying we're going to win this jungle position in the one-on-one exclusively. And now the opportunity is had for Derty potentially go for a 3 buff in this early stage of the game. The Olaf with a crazy fast clear, always okay engagement against an opposition, especially in low health when he's got all that healing in addition to attack speed. So Goto has to just play out this early jungle however Derty decides it to be. One benefit is that you do have the Ryze for pushing in the earlier stage of the game, which means that FutureSelf shoves up at the level 2 mark. This is just the 2nd wave that's coming in. Normally, you would go out and you try to get a ward somewhere. I think he was able to drop one over the Raptor wall to see where the Olaf is, and it might actually open up for Goto to go looking at, if the Olaf is low health when he gets to his blue buff, potentially for an invade to steal that one away or even look for a kill.
Yeah, so it looks like Derty went from blue back to Raptors to red. So still sitting at level 2 because you don't have that XP yet until you end up taking, I think, 1 or 2 of the small wolf camps. And that's kind of the advantage here that Buffalo had. You know, if you are Vespa in a situation where you are getting invaded by an Olaf, if you are prepared for it, you can, you know, go for the sort of vertical jungling style. But Goto was full on set on starting to clear on the bottom side, and so now it will be a very almost certain 3 buff here for Derty, getting that early advantage due to some of the champions and their power in the level 1.
And this is where I would expect Goto to actually go invading to look for something. He's going to walk into top side where he's going to catch Derty. The problem is Derty is near full health. This is not where you normally catch an Olaf.
Oh, he smites it.
Oh, he smites it away. He's stuck.
He gets the crab. Here comes
flash.
the undertow, forcing the flash away. Get a little extra space from FutureSelf. Goto will be able to survive. Nice usage of the Rune Prison to deny the continued chase. So, Derty continuing to push the tempo, but unable to find first blood just yet.
I was a little frustrated by the flash from Goto because I think he wanted to go over the wall, but Derty's right back in the mid lane now.
Yep, FutureSelf still has the flash. We'll have to use it. And now without any mana will be a likely reset forced out onto the Ryze. So Derty already flexing his muscles a little bit in this early game. The crab will be secured on the bottom side by Goto, so it's not all lost just yet.
Not completely, but it is a very quick early game effect with flashes burnt in the jungle and mid positions here that make so much of a difference into allowing the Sylas a lot more breathing room inside of the mid lane to potentially return ganks to come through from FutureSelf, where he has to play a lot more respectfully than what he would have had to with the flash as well. A lot of openings that were just kind of brought out, but just coming through. Very nice.
Big damage though coming out from FutureSelf still. Only has the tier, but I mean, Sylas is a little bit punishable early on in the laning phase until he gets a couple more items. He needs to scale up a little bit, especially in some of these ranged matchups. So might start to channel that base himself now that there is also FutureSelf using that teleport. Instead, just going to stick around with the wave crashing in.
Hanging out because my apologies, it looks like Derty is close enough. They're not going to catch him on a ward until right then and there, which means he's going to be able to catch this wave. And the Ryze just backed, which means that there's not really much gold here to utilize for FutureSelf. He might have maybe boots at best. Yeah, he's got boots and that's it. Yeah, well called by you. The nice mental map, being able to snag that couple of ways that he was able to get that gold in his back pocket. But not only does this yield the wave that was getting crashed under from FutureSelf over to the Sylas, but it means he also gets to leave it where he wants it, and it's on his side of the lane. So there's more minions that are going to be stacked against FutureSelf, so there's more for him to pick up later.
Right engage down here in the bottom side. Unbreakable doing a decent chunk to prevent a lot of the damage from going into the UBuffalo bottom lane. So doesn't look like all too much is happening down there. CS slightly in favor of Kyriu at this point, which is not necessarily where you want to be in terms of Vespa, because you have this Misfortune who should be more dominant in the laning phase. Looking at the itemization setup, it is the Comet. I see an Amp Tome in inventory as well. Likely going to be see that Leandri's first, which Rebel, I know you're a big fan of.
It's kind of crazy. I was talking about how, like, if you have more magic damage than, like, or more AD across your team, you can go for more magic damage. You can go for Leandri's when it comes to, champions that end up standing more still. To me, this is a bad idea, because name for me a champion other than maybe Jinx before she gets excited that stands still inside of a fight.
Yeah.
Your problems.
The burn might not be as impactful, but still. Decent amount of advantage and early power locked in here, but now Derty is in a whole lot of trouble getting it landed in by the dredge line, and that is first blood. We see the flash over from Nyeong trying to defend, but he's going in 1v3. Realm Warp coming out from FutureSelf as well. Big overstep coming out from Buffalo, and it looks like Vespa will capitalize. FutureSelf makes it 2-0.
Entirely lost right here. They grab the dragon away. They're back into bottom side almost immediately, but there's so many more champions right next to the Olaf, right? Like, Kyriu is trying to put in damage over top of the wall with the rockets. You are just a Noon Quiver Jinx. Like, that's what you've got. You don't have any, like, real damage significantly to throw into a fight like this. You don't even have crits to work with the rockets. Yeah. And yet you're here trying to contest it. Now Kyriu probably gets punished as well, because he didn't leave. He didn't let them push this lane. Goto's here, but at least he has his support, so there is that to talk about. And that's going to prompt them to really have to leave. So at minimum, the wave is going to get caught by Jinx, which is one additional to this. But yeah, way overextension right here from the Olaf.
It seemed like a little bit of just, overconfidence even onto Derty. He goes for the invade, but the collapse is just too good. Just bursts down instantaneously.
Just wasn't ready for it. I mean, even Nautilus at the beginning of the game with, like, all the CC combined and all the abilities combined does a decent chunk of damage into the Olaf, who doesn't have the Ragnarok, doesn't quite have this, the Gordon Reaper either to be able to live a situation like that. I think Derty was anticipating that it was just Goto, and so he was like, okay, I can take this engagement. Now I'm getting caught out by Butterfan.
Yeah, he might get punished again right here. Ornn into the searing charge. So much damage! What is this? Assassin Ornn one-shotting him almost 100-0. Derty had no time to react. He didn't have level 6.
No, he did not. Now with the Ornn down, this is Emprisonner who could potentially punish the Ornn. So there's that at least. But Can't quite find
You
it.
take
Instead,
that.
just gets the flash out of him. And this early game from Olaf was looking really good. He burnt 2 flashes. He was feeling really powerful. Was able to farm up really had to go to. But now, multiple kills bled over to the enemy team. Multiple kind of kills given over to a team that's going to be doing really well in the midst of the mid game to be able to take advantage of all of this. So, VESPA, they've got a little bit of ground to stand on. I thought it was possible that like the rug could get pulled out from under them with the Olaf, that they could have tried to shut down the Viego, but instead, it seems like an early game that the Viego is going to be perfectly fine waiting until the fights, the true fights start to come out with a kill onto your Ornn and your Ryze. Your solo lanes are feeling perfectly fine as well, so nothing really going that awry right now for VESPA. Instead, just being able to get their footing underneath of them, being able to be neutralizing in the bottom lane as well. The Jinx has had a little bit in farm, but VESPA feeling fine with where they're at.
It seems like this parabola kind of narrowed a little bit towards the beginning, Rebel. It's like, you know, when you put the higher coefficient on the A value, a little bit higher, then it goes like thinner, I think, in that way. So that's kind of what's happened here. We're only 8 minutes in. This should still be a point where Buffalo have the advantage just due to the nature of their champions. But Vespa's up 3 kills. They're up 1,500 gold, and they have this mid-game composition that works so well. Things are really looking good for them at this point.
Feeling great about where you're at if you're VESPA. So now it's about you, Buffalo. What are they going to be able to accomplish? Because you do have a Jinx, so you have the ability to kind of scale with a front-to-back type team fight, which does feel like outside of the Viego is what you're going to be playing to very heavily if you're on the side of VESPA, so you do have that, at least in your back pocket. How do you get this Sylas and this Aatrox into a position where they feel like incredible team fighters in the mid-game ahead of time? I feel like if you're Olaf, you've got to put some attention into some of these lanes. You've got to try to punish these solo laners.
Oh, Kanas taken very low, trying to bait in FutureSelf to allow Derty to come through. Yeah, it's just continued, presence here for VESPA. Derty's going to try to get something back here with the Rift Herald take. First Dragon also secured by Buffalo with the priority that Derty was able to have in the early game. So now Goto's in the area as well. The collapse could be imminent here, Rebel.
The Aatrox is here. The Ornn is showing up right now. Both mid laners are here. Kanas is kind of low in health. He's level 8. He's going to do a lot of damage.
A lot of damage here, but here's the re-engage. Ornn coming out, and FutureSelf picked up the kill onto Derty. It will be the reset, though, as Goto falls, and now Emprisonner looking to try and finish it off. Nice realm warp out of FutureSelf, dodging away from the knockups of the Aatrox to keep himself alive. It goes 1 for 1. Priority still around the top side here for Buffalo, but no jungler alive means no Herald to be taken.
So trading jungler for jungler, I think, ultimately is favorable because you do get to shut out Viego a little bit. The damage does go over to the other team. The Ice Ornn ultimate, I think, shut down quite a bit. The Ragnarok dropped a lot of the health, and it meant that FutureSelf was in a good place. So close to being able to deny the Realm Warp with that flash keep coming out, but not able to. Instead, FutureSelf gets to sneak away, just the 1 for 1. But it is a bit of gold into... it was the Olaf who picked it up. That's even worse. I was hoping that it was the Sylas who picked it up. I thought that's what that was at the end of things. But again, not having gold in the solo laners when they can skirmish like this makes things even more difficult to try to deal with. Again, VESPA are looking for ways to grasp back into a game like this. The Olaf is still powerful even though you're down 3 deaths at the beginning of the game. Trying to leverage it has not been a boon here for Buffalo. They gotta find a step up from Derty. They gotta find a step up from these a lot of these lanes to be able to work with because they're trying to contest. If they can take this dragon, that would be a massive first step.
Goto in a lot of trouble. 4 members of Buffalo trying to collapse in onto Viego. Had this might to buy some time, but look at the backside. Big bullet time coming out from Blamed One to shut down Kyriu. Dragon at 1k XP. Derty will likely secure it. And so it is just another 1 for 1. Objective going in favor of Buffalo. Continuing to just try and claw their way back into this game.
And this is what I've been hoping that they were able to accomplish from that first gank onto FutureSelf and Goto. That with the flashes down, they can leverage into more river pressure, being able to take things like dragons and such. And so now, 2 dragons in your back pocket, you're feeling good about that. Rift Herald is still available as well. You can skirmish really well with the damage that you've got with the Sylas and an Aatrox, and that kill went on to the Sylas. You're feeling great. Instead, back to the bottom lane.
No ultimates on the bot laners. Blamed One and Izumi are rather defenseless. Ragnarok coming out. They do burn the flash, and now the stun will come through. Blamed One might get locked down really quickly, but it's still somehow able to run all the way back under the turret. The crowd control means nearly nothing for the Misfortune. Izumi still survives as well, and somehow VESPA survive.
It looks like at no point was Derty able to actually get a full kind of play into Blamed One, despite the Q landing from Nyeong and his Hatchet's landing. The flash was enough to get him out alongside the heal, and the W being able to provide that cleanse as well was enough. Now on the mid lane, more action. It's just FutureSelf being able to deny Chains won't land as well. That might have been a death sentence. Never mind.
Here we go. Everfrost gonna land. Conqueror proc. Goto in the area though, so Kanas cannot continue to go for the play. Rift Herald into the hands of Viego as well. Is rather underexperienced, but is going to be able to crash this wave in. a crash from Shelly will certainly at least bring the mid lane outer turret to below 1,000 HP. But here comes the chains. Goto forced to use the Heartbreaker away, but the axe will hold true. Derty securing the kill alongside Canas. Herald will go down, but it's a kill in favor of Buffalo.
The thing they could do to stop that, so instead they jump it. I don't think that VESPA was actually in a position where they were expecting them to run past the Rift Herald and start fighting them, but that's exactly what they did, because they knew there's no way we stop this. We can't hit the eye, we can't smite it and bring it down before it charges at our tower, so we're just going to lose the plates anyway. Let's just make a play happen, and it works. Another Sylas kill. Now bottom side, another potential
Izumi
play.
getting stunned over the wall. Flash was nice to get himself away from that Glacial Fissure. So Izumi surviving, just having to burn that Summoner spell. Trade for the ultimate. Now, bot lane still maybe the topic of conversation. Look at all the players around this area. Dragon not spawning for 2.5 minutes, but it looks like a dive might be imminent.
Oh, that's a good play. I love that Buffalo are taking a more aggressive stance in this game. They're not falling by the wayside. They're not waiting for them to come through.
Dealing with the death charge here is Canas. Let's see where the knockout lands. It is on the Blamed one. He will get a lot of damage done. Bullet time will get blocked out mostly by Nyeong. Might be the sacrificial Braum here as he will go down. Now, what can the rest of VESPA do? Ragnarok popped in here, but no flash available means that Derty will go down. FutureSelf now in a killing spree as VESPA punished the dive.
No reinforce coming in from Emprisonner. Not only, we were literally like seconds away from Unleash Teleport, and I think that's maybe what Emprisonner was waiting for, but Butterfan doesn't have to. He's got Ornn ultimate, so he's so much more range than what the Aatrox is able to bring to a dive like that. There was so much vision as well around the bottom side. You could see that ring of vision that was there the entire time that prevented this. Canas was on a ward. They knew where everybody was. The engagement onto Blamed one, they kind of knew. Look how far back he is. Who was actually testing that position? If Derty's here, you can get on top of him, right? You can go diving under the tower if you've got the Olaf hand in hand with the Sylas, but because he's not there, he's so far back, runs up from too far back, and the bullet time kind of stalls everything out so much that eventually Buffalo just gets punished off the rotation from everybody else in the fight. And again, big TP from Butterfan. This is like the third game in a row now that Butterfan has felt like he's had more impact on the map than Emprisonner, despite Emprisonner taking these more lane dominant chances, having this comfort in his back pocket. It just hasn't suited him all that well. He hasn't been able to make this big impact, and I've been waiting for it, because this Aatrox is something I've been waiting to see the entirety of the game. I didn't get to see a lot of ESC games. This is the champion that he was known for, and he hasn't really impressed me, not necessarily mechanically, but just on his ability to affect the map and kind of win the game for his team.
I mean, look at where he is at right now. You know, despite having that early advantage, and Butterfan's still ahead in gold at this point, although being rather marginal to say the least. But that's just kind of the state that we're in right now. And Prisoner really hasn't had his chance to get online, especially in the last game. Sure, in game number 1, eventually the Aatrox was able to scale and take over the game a little bit as that frontliner, but in this game right now, not in a great spot to do that.
And I want to point out one member on the side of VESPA that's actually been overperforming this series, which is FutureSelf. I think we had a lot of doubts about FutureSelf stepping in as like both a jungle main, being kind of like a role swap into the mid lane, having this Rengar as the back pocket pick for some potential cheese. We were expecting Canas to go crazy. Here's a bottom side dive.
Oh yeah, he's a jungler, so he knows how to gank. Taking the Realm Morph back down. Nyeong going down as well. Goto picks up the final blow. Teleport coming in from Emprisonner. They're going to look to try to trade. Derty lands a shutdown in onto Izumi, and Canas is here as well. But it's a double kill already onto the Flame Bomb, but he'll get locked down as well. Emprisonner finally arrives with the teleport, and he is absolutely massive. Massive shutdown in onto the Ryze. A double kill into the hands of Canas, and Butterfan has to flash away, but their dashes are too much from Buffalo. They punish the over-aggression. A triple kill for the Sylas, and the ace comes through.
And it's a position that we've seen a number of times from VESPA where they play towards their bottom side. Their Misfortune and Nautilus are doing so well in this game. They can set up for a dragon play potentially. They're looking for this dive to come through. But finally, Graves! Finally, they live up to their expectations. Finally, he shows up. The solo laners that I've been harping so much on for Buffalo show up huge in this fight, getting the Misfortune ult to putting damage on the back from Canas, and everybody going down one by one like dominoes to Imprisoner's Aatrox with the CC and the damage he's able to bring through. I wanted them to be doing this 5-10 minutes sooner into the game, but hey, late's better than never. They confirmed their third dragon of the game, and now we got contention, right? We got Dragon scaling up against the team who's got a 2k advantage. There's legitimate fact that in this game, Buffalo is within reaching distance of VESPA. Despite being down 2k gold at this point, that fourth dragon would be such a huge boon to their team fighting. Such a huge amount of damage to throw in, especially onto a 5-kill Sylas, that this is threatening beyond belief for VESPA. They have to find a way to prevent them from getting this fourth dragon.
And it's kind of interesting because we were discussing some of the falters that Buffalo had towards that early mid game. Derty had a couple of over aggressive plays. The rest of the VESPA team was able to collapse. Nice teleports coming out from Butterfan. They still had when all said and done, they still got a good amount of the advantage that they wanted through this early game. Maybe Derty's not as strong as he might have wanted to be on this Olaf, but he has done a good amount of work in terms of accelerating his solo laners. As you said, Canas 5-0 and 2 now. They have 3 dragons on Soul Point. The Hex Tech will do so much in terms of zoning and damage onto this VESPA lineup. And so, even though the gold lead might slightly still be in favor of Virginia Tech, Buffalo definitely still have the advantage early on.
Oh, Canas!
Here we go. I mean, it's an Ornn, so it will take a while to take down, but Derty also in the area, going to land the abscond abduct. Ornn will just try to be followed up, only landed the knockup before he goes down. Derty secures the kill.
This is how I wanted to see them play in the first couple of games, because this was my expectation, is I want to see Derty really accelerate the lanes. And it seems like what they did more so was they were trying to push an advantage with their Olaf, and they were leaving their lanes to kind of scale of their own volition. Well, it worked out decently. You see 40 CS advantage now, a couple of kills into the Aatrox. The 5 kills off of Canas is mostly from the skirmishes that are generated from the Olaf, back to bottom side dive, but Imprisoner's here's ahead of time for this one.
Let's trying again. Teleport coming in from Canas. So the collapse might be able to be re-engaged onto. There's so much damage. FutureSelf gets shut down. Kyriu picking up the kill. Maybe has some resets as well. Blamed One and Eita have nowhere to go but back to their base. Rift Herald taking to the top side as well.
And a cross-map play now. VESPA trying to say, okay, you just made a play to top side to kill off our Ornn. We have no play there. That means we're going to put our resources to the other side of the map. Very common. Defense is there. Now back to bottom side. Kyriu and Canas are still around. This time Goto's around, though. He could
Izumi
kill
tanked up so much damage.
Kyriu.
Keep your eyes on Kyriu. He's so low, but can put out the damage if he's left untouched. Bullet time going to come out. Nyeong barely gets away. Finally will fall. And the flash out from Kyriu will keep himself alive. Finally, Butterfan arrives with the teleport, but it might be a little bit too late here. Stopwatch pop, and that means Imprisoner has the angle to try to come back in. World Ender on. Blamed One forced to flash away. Kyriu still alive. On a killing spree now as Izumi goes down. The knockups land in on the Butterfan. Blame One trying to do his best to dish out some more damage, but Buffalo just completely outwork VESPA, working all the way around, and they keep their Jinx alive at the end of it.
And I was about to say,
barely.
Not quite. Had gone down topside, so they put resources in the bottom lane, saying, hey, we can make this play happen. They're going to double down on it by teleporting him back into bottom side. Butterfan that is into the bottom side play, and they lose both engagements, one after the other. After the Rift Herald had gone down on top side, that was the 3rd time burning the Ornn ultimate during the course of this. This is the backup play. This is the 2nd time this comes through, which is off the back of a nice Nautilus hook. Canas being here, I think, was the real kind of, preventer of anything bad going down. If Goto gets onto Kyriu and ends up getting a reset and starts going crazy, you can do insane things. But Goto thankfully gets brought down before any real damage is done. Kyriu able to kite backwards in the fight. This is when Butterfan gets brought in again, doubling down on this. A fantastic stopwatch. Also buys time for Imprisoner to shell up. And I thought this was going to go a lot worse, but unfortunately they can't quite find Blade One. That flash keeps them alive just long enough in the fight for this to end up being a lot more equalized. But how much of Buffalo's resources were burnt over 2 consistent plays for no advantage? In fact, bleeding a ridiculous amount of gold back into the side of Buffalo. Buffalo have found their footing in this game. They've taken the gold advantage back. They've got 3 dragons and a Rift Herald to set it up, and 30 seconds until that soul point is on the board.
This is really interesting here, because a point that I wanted to bring up, before that fight ended up going down, was just how the bot laners have interacted throughout the series. Blamed One has done really well in both of the games, and Kyriu seemed to be on the back foot for most of this series, but the amount of positioning, such great work out of him in that fight, keeping himself alive, now fully online with 3 kills onto the Jinx. And they're going to need all of it right now here, Rebel, because this Hex Tech Dragon is spawning in 5 seconds. That is the soul if they're able to pick it up.
Rift Herald is no longer available. Looks like that was used to crack mid-tower. Instead, they just push out mid-lane. Butterfan is already here, well-established. Canas grabs the Ornn ultimate to respond with. He's going to use this to zone them.
Here we go. Knockup only lands in onto Misfortune, but the Ornn to follow on the other side, and the dragon is stolen away by VESPA. Goto picking it up, and it looks like the fight's going to go in their favor as well. Huge bullet time coming out from Blamed One as the round warp comes in. Only Canas survives as 4 fall face flat onto the ground for Buffalo. They lose the soul. They might give up the ace as well. Slowing landing Izumi trying to chase Dredgeline. Misses out. But the chase will continue. We might have to cue the Benny Hill music, Rebel, because this might take a while. Going over is FutureSelf with the blast cone. Might have entered himself into a 1v1, but he slowed himself up enough. Dredgeline flashed away from under the tower. Canas goes. He will survive, but VESPA destroy the fight.
It's a situation where Buffalo are so intent on getting this dragon and making sure that they are going to confirm this because they feel it's the win condition that gives them the entire game, that they are not focusing on the fight around them. Vespa actually do the exact opposite. They say, how do we set up this fight? Even if they get to the Hex Tech Soul, we have to win this fight because it can buy us more time!
Blamed one?
Almost goes down.
He's okay, he's okay.
Okay.
He has a honey fruit.
Honey fruit.
Deep breath here, Rebel. We're getting there. Baron is secured.
Nyeong.
Look at the collapse though. Blame one so low. He's not having that flash and he has no life. Shut down and out to Derty. The turnaround might be here for Buffalo. Look at Emprisonner up in the background line, taking up so much damage. And that is the turn that Buffalo needs. Going back and forth we go here, Rebel. This is not a parabola. This is a sine wave. This game 3 is going crazy.
This is a hyperbolic tangent wave, man. Why? Because nobody knows what that means, and I don't know what's happening right now, because we're going back and forth so much. It's Vespa who make a really good play, and then they extend it into the Baron Pit, they lose too much health, and on the way out, they aren't ready for Buffalo to be there in time to actually capitalize on their escape. Now, this is going to be a bunch of gold flooding back in the pocket, not only the kills coming from the previous fight and the shutout of the Baron, but also towers that are being brought down as well. Much harder to use this Baron buff on the side of Vespa than you would have wanted. Ultimately, all things considered, really all that Vespa accomplished over these last few minutes in terms of like gold advantage or anything else, they denied the 4th break. We gotta wait another 3 minutes before the next one spawns because we're getting more action around that. Yes, the 2K gold is there. I don't think it's that big of a difference. I don't think it matters at this point. It comes down to who's able to play out the fights better. That's his pick onto Izumi.
So much trouble, so much CC. He's a support. There's 4 members of Buffalo there. What can he really do?
Just gets caught out on his side of the jungle. Wasn't anticipating that. And again, doesn't really matter. It's just a bit of gold back into the pockets of Buffalo. They're not using that setup. They have 2.5 minutes. Right here, this first deploy, I think, is the most important one from both teams, trying to figure out where their lane setup is going to go. I don't love FutureSelf, I guess, being on one side of the map unless he's able to draw really significant attention, and I think he agrees with me here. Because if you're pushing for top side over the next, say, minute or something, it's a lot of pressure that you're taking off of both mid and bottom lane that could be useful with this Baron buff to try to set up for second dragon. And Vespa, truthfully, over the next few minutes, shouldn't be trying to win the game, but instead should be trying to deny next dragon, because that's the win condition Buffalo is looking for. You want to set up around what it is that they're going to try to do, especially with the Baron off the board for a lot longer than what the dragon is going to be able to do. And so I want to see the Ryze elsewhere, helping out on the map, just making sure that they have positioning and wave control around their mid and bot waves. You can see he's pushing in, forcing Emprisonner to be around here. But again, in the next 30 seconds, I would love to see this swap just to make sure that the Ryze is in position for team fights.
Yeah, FutureSelf is one of the few champions that still has the Baron buff, and now around the top side, Vespa goes, and they're going to try to find the engage. Big AoE, but here comes Emprisonner on the other side. Bullet time coming out from Blamed One. It can be big. Stopwatch is burned. Nobody's died just yet, and finally the first casualty is down. And the casualties all go in favor of Vespa for now. But Kyriu is absolutely huge. He has a triple kill, getting slowed up by the Make It Rain, so he can't go for more. But what a turnaround from the Jinx. It looks so much in Vespa's favor, but Kyriu wants to stay alive here in this bracket.
I'm so conflicted right now because on one hand, it's a gorgeous fight on both sides. You get a catch out in a very small area. You're trying to pinch them into the Misfortune ultimate, but the Jinx does the same thing on the other side. It gets this massive reset to put in a bunch of damage to Vespa, and it's setting themselves up for success. The problem is you're doing this over nothing. Like, there's nothing on the map to fight like that. There's no reason to. They're trying to catch them around topside. It looked like it was an attempted punish, but everybody caught in the jungle. The pinch off from FutureSelf as well, preventing him from really accomplishing that much when he's got a bunch of gold, was gorgeous. The Braum shield, but look at Kyriu at the bottom of the fight. No one can get to him at all. Man. They're trying to peel him away. He hasn't taken damage. He's still full health this whole time, Graves. Incredible to see him be able to carry a fight like that. Forces out the flash from Blame One. Because if they end up getting into an auto battle, almost certainly Jinx wipes that entire team completely. And now, 20 seconds to Dragon. What did the setup look like? Bottom wave is still pushed. Buffalo wasn't able to shove it out. Instead, they're going right up mid lane. They're going to try to push into the river like that.
Is 40 kills in 26 minutes. The action does not stop here in game 3, and here comes another team fight. Ornn gonna come out, knocking up 2. FutureSelf, the target of the rocket comes through. Emprisonner gets the first reset of the fight, and now the health advantage is in favor of Buffalo. Watch the bullet time, it buys so much time, but that's a Leandri's misfortune. It doesn't do that much. Shutdown going into the hands of Kinos. Izumi falls as well, and Butterfan goes down. Kyriu is unstoppable, and Buffalo take the fight 4-0.
Nyeong clutching the last 2 fights with these massive shields to shut out the Misfortune ultimate into everybody else. That was a massive choke point that they kind of funneled into to allow the Misfortune to put in that damage, but it no longer matters. The death timers are long enough that I think base is going to be damaged pretty intensively right here. I don't think they have long enough to win the game, but the important bit, the Hex Tech Soul. The gold advantage back in their favor, but it's so even it doesn't matter. But that Hex Tech Soul is worth so much inside of teamfights for a composition that has the move speed that they do for everybody else coming about. That was risky because Kyriu was the last one through the portal. You had to be a little more careful than that next time, Jinx. But still, this is a massively winning situation now for Buffalo. They've got the setup necessary around this next major objective, the Baron coming up soon. Able to snag for themselves with this big fight win.
I mean, the fight looks so much in favor of Buffalo at this point, and it continued to do so. You thought the turnaround was here with the bullet time, but man, Nyeong was just so huge with that Unbreakable.
Really was. And at the last second, it looked like a blast cone guy hit to knock him out of the way. And I'm curious if the Nautilus will like hit that. I don't know who it was that actually smacked it to get him out of the way. But if that had happened earlier, I really think 2 or 3 members go down, and that becomes a lot harder of a contestation from Buffalo to go on to the Dragon. It's okay. We're getting
in trouble.
Yeah,
we're at the point. Baron spawning in 30 seconds. This could be big if they go to that 4v5 advantage. Kanas dashing forward with the abscond abduct. Butterfan will do the flash away with the searing charge. So Realm Warp coming in from FutureSelf as well. It is a couple of crucial ultimates burned for the side of VESPA. All the members from both teams are towards the bottom side of the map with Baron spawning at 15.
Okay. It's also a very damage-heavy Ryze. Normally we see the tank Ryze, but here in this one, FutureSelf has gone for complete AP, so the Ryze is a legitimate threat to do damage as well. So you've got 3 really big threats with a couple of tank options. The attempted cutoff from VESPA to make sure they can't one through Kyriu.
Kyriu gets locked up in the depth charge. Beautiful denial from Nyeong to prevent the bullet time from doing anything onto the Jinx. And here come the resets again. Emprisonner picking up a kill. Kanas with another. And FutureSelf forced to run to the hills. Butterfan barely was able to do anything in that fight. No frontline available for VESPA. And now Buffalo's looking to try and seal the deal. Kanas going for the 1v1 onto FutureSelf. He's going to win out on it. Look at the healing coming out from the Sylas. 10-2 and 16 on this mid laner for Buffalo. Only the tank is alive. The death timers are so high for Buffalo. Can they do it, Rebel?
They're really close. I think it's going to be hard for Butter to actually stop this. I think this is going to be
a lot of trouble. Yeah, here's a knock up onto 2. Can he get one
There
trade? The answer is no. And VESPA put up a hard fight, but it is the University of Buffalo moving on to the round of 16 here in LoL.
Why are we kicking off the tournament with a game so stressful, Graves? Back and forth all game, these two competitive from top to bottom. Incredibly exciting to watch. Time and time again, team fights going in both directions. But by the end of the game, really the difference maker ended up being that Braum. Being able to shut out that Misfortune from doing as much damage, shutting out a lot of the bouncing that could come through from the multi-target damage. And the resets really never got into fruition. Like, Goto never really found access to the Jinx in the backline on the Viego the way we anticipated. And so the fights got to play a lot more front to back, and when you're the one with the Jinx, you're always going to favor having that front to back, especially when your front line is as beefy and as damage heavy as you were in that game. The mid game looked a little scrappy. The beginning of the game didn't look great, but Buffalo, they pull out the 2-1 one way or another.
Oh man, eventually, you know, after when all said and done, it was just a Buffalo win. It was what everyone was expecting, sort of, but definitely not in the fashion that we saw right there in that series. Big shout out to VESPA. You know, they didn't have a lot of expectations coming into this week, Rebel. They were the 4 seed out of the South Conference. They looked, you know, not very good against some of the higher seeded opponents and even some opponents below them, but they were able to show their stuff. They worked out proper compositions. They played really well as a 5-man unit, but unfortunately it just was not enough.
And finally, I think we saw the team kind of break loose from what we saw in the first couple games. It felt like they were so caught into this, like, just play neutralizing, let the jungle take things over, and then just play towards like the mid and late game type fights because we think we have better hands in those situations than the opposition. And what was nice about VESPA is they proved the exact opposite true. VESPA was proof enough with a lot of their players, especially Blamed One in a number of situations, that really kind of clutched up for the team. And their solo lanes also were very valiant. I want to give a lot of credit once again to their mid laner because he was somebody that we had a lot of criticism potentially coming into the series, or a lot of questions about walking into the series into someone like Kanas, and showed up humongous inside of this one. The Ryze almost being enough of a deterrent to be able to take that last game as well. So props to VESPA. Getting to this situation was a vote-in situation. Having that stressful of a game for us to kick things off as a vote-in team just goes to show how competitive they truly can be. Buffalo really being able to overcome that adaptation, breaking out of their shell, and finally showing us what they can do, being able to show the adaptation necessary. And now they get a date with Maryville in round of 16. What a prize.
It'll be a tough task for them, a bit of a sour prize at the end of the day for their victory. But, you know, this is where upsets happen. We saw it almost happen against Buffalo. Hey, maybe they can pull off something against the Saints. We still have so much more League of Legends here to cover, Rebel. But first, want to send it over to the analyst desk where we also have interviews with the winners of Buffalo. We'll see you in a little bit.
excellent cast, you guys. And Rebel, I love that you brought up the fact that the winning prize for UBuffalo is a date with Maryville in the round of 16. Gentlemen, some quick thoughts before we hop into an interview with UBuffalo's coach.
It's a banger collegiate game. Like that was probably the most collegiate series that you can get. You know, you have collegiate god comps, you have random deaths everywhere, you have funny wacky builds. Like, yeah, it was pretty much what you expect from a collegiate series. So I was excited for it.
Yep, I will take the same boat. Fun collegiate series, as expected. Anyone can beat anyone, so take it as you will. Hopefully, Buffalo levels up quite a lot, so that way they can put a real show against Maryville.
I completely agree. I mean, I feel like there's like an outside chance maybe there could be an upset. I don't know. I mean, we did all predict 2-0, and this was a very, very close 3-game set. But we do, I believe, have the coach for UBuffalo ready for an interview, Arib. Let's see if we can get him connected in. Oh, okay. Cool. Sounds good. We will have a break, actually, before we bring in the coach. So we have a couple minutes to actually discuss this game. We have a few clips from this game. The first clip, I believe, is actually a massive bottom team fight where we finally saw the Ryze ultimate utilized, but maybe not in the best manner, RBM.
Yeah, we had the first Ryze ult, which was pretty grief at the Gromp invade by Olaf, who decided to flip the game at the Gromp, lost the game for quite a bit. But we had a good Ryze ulti on the second ulti. We get the replay. So Ryze has his prio, makes his move down. Here, this is the biggest issue that we kind of had with this play, is that Ornn actually opted in to cross the entire map without his ult to come contribute to this play, where Aatrox gets the TP. So Ornn is contributing nothing and doesn't actually stop the Aatrox from TPing instead. So you end up like getting in this weird situation where now we're all under the tower. MF can't hit anybody, has to run all the way in just to get one shot by Sylas, even though Sylas still misses E. And he gets the MF ult and then one shots the entire team. So this is like a huge turnaround for UBuffalo, and Canos got really, really, really fed off this because he got a bunch of shutdowns as well as they got the next dragon afterwards. But a little bit of an overcommit, but they finally at least used Ryze in a proactive way. So we saw someone use Ryze in a decent way, which is rare for collegiate.
Yeah, and like RBM said, that is the proper usage of Ryze. They just missed a step where it was Aatrox was more valuable than Ornn was when he has no ultimate. So if you deny that, then that's a game-ending type of dive, and that probably could have been best win for the series.
Yeah, for sure. And it's that kind of play that gets Buffalo back into it. I believe we've got time for one more replay. So let's take a look at around 22 minutes. There was a team fight towards the Dragon that led into a Baron fight, and things got really spicy during the middle of the game, TJ.
Yeah, so it starts around the dragon. We actually see a steal here. We see MF ult go absolutely nuts, doing tons of damage, and we this is exactly what happens during collegiate games. Lots of craziness, lots of engage. We see that Braum can't block any of that ult because he's hit by a bunch of CC, and Misfortune is able to do so much damage. Unfortunately, the Ryze ult is wasted. If they would have Ryze ulted towards the Baron, they actually would have gotten out of the situation and would have again been in a winning position. So it is these small missteps that end up costing a lot. Baron does actually happen here, and then because of the failed Ryze ult, blue side is able to come back in. Misfortune gets hit by the Jinx ult, low HP, and it's a cleanup. So what was a winning situation ended up turning into a losing situation, and from here it's actually really hard for VESPA to play the game. They just lose so much tempo on the map here. So kind of unfortunate, but that's where you look back and you're like, if we were just this much better, then
Yeah.
we could have won.
Those are always the killer situations, right? You're going to be watching back this VOD later tonight, later this week, and it was just so close. But it really was a special series for them. But we do now have the coach for UBuffalo ready for an interview. So if we can get him pulled in, we have some questions for him. We have a short break before he actually joins us, and then we will be back with UBuffalo's head coach for an interview. Hello, everyone, and we are joined with UBuffalo's head coach, Arib. How you doing after that series, man?
Honestly, a little stressed to be honest. Definitely some ups and downs across all three games, and definitely have a lot to look over as we take a bit of a breather for the past 2 hours.
Yes, honestly, it feels like sometimes those series are the best to get out of the way in the beginning, though, right? Because you get
Mhm.
so many learning points from those games and kind of, shakes off the nerves a little bit. But the desk does have a few questions for you. The first question is, what do you want people watching to know about the program at Buffalo? Because we did have that little segment in the beginning where you guys had that really awesome gaming room. What sort of things would you like the public to know about Buffalo's program?
Yeah, so over the past, I'd say maybe 2, 3 years. So during my own, I'm a junior right now. So
Hmm.
as soon as I came into UB, I got to see this entire esports program, not just League of Legends, sort of start to blow up. We have so all of our teams are in the ESC, but Overwatch, CS:GO have been performing pretty well, and the school has started to put more funding towards esports programs, which has honestly been something that I never expected to see, coming into college. I just came in here, just to go to school and to be able to
Yeah.
enjoy my passion of League of Legends, like at school, or sort of like through school, has been really cool to see. Like that, so Level Up, the name of that computer lab, just recently opened in the past month, and I go in there, a couple times a week. And I just see it's completely full. People are playing. You got CS:GO, you got League. A little too much Valorant for me, honestly. But it's just really nice to see people, get to interact with each other. Usually at home, right? You're kind of in your own world, and you get to be with other people who share those interests.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome. And one of the picks in that series that was really dominating was the Jinx pick, right? We saw it heavily prioritized in pretty much every single game. It dominated a lot of those team fights. So what was sort of your thought as the coach of Buffalo? What sort of priority did you guys have on it, and what impact did you think it had on the series?
Yeah, so right after seeing that series, it was kind of Jinx was to me one of the main deciding factors just for each team. And coming into this, right, having known Kyriu since coming into school, Jinx has always been a champion that throughout the years has been someone that he likes to play. And having Jinx be such a strong champion this past year has really been a priority pick for us. And it's just been a priority pick for Collegiate as a whole. Just the strength of Jinx alone is something that you can't ever count out. You're in 30 minutes, you're in 40 minutes. She might not be fed, but if you take your eye off her, she gets one takedown, it's she's going from
Yeah, it's one of those champions. I feel like it especially excels at the collegiate level, right? We had RBM on the desk who was talking about it, and it can just dominate team fights, right? It has such a simple front to back kit, so really good to see you guys picking up on how strong it was and really taking over the game with it. My final question for you guys, obviously Maryville has won their round one match. You guys have a date with Maryville a little sooner than maybe you were hoping, round of 16. What are your thoughts without spoiling anything, going into that next match?
there. Yeah, so Maryville is someone that it's kind of obvious, right? That no one really wants to see them. It's kind of like
Yeah.
the monster under the bed. You don't ever want. It's like honestly, I'm tripping over my own words right now. That's how shaky I am personally. I know my players are a lot more sort of locked in right now. I'm just a bit jittery in general, and so Maryville is someone that they have amazing players in all 5 roles. They have such a good program. They're really like sort of a paragon of what the collegiate experience can really be. It'll, regardless of how that series goes, it'll be a great experience and an honor to be able to play against them in this tournament.
That's a great mindset to have. Thank you so much for coming on. Do you have any last words you'd like to say to any fans, anybody watching?
Um, I just like to thank sort of the competitive esports staff at UB. They've been such a great help towards getting this program going. There have been a lot of rough patches this past few months with getting the ESC season going. To see ourselves make it here, make it through this series, it's really heartwarming to be able to just like be here and share this moment with our team.
That's great to hear. Great job, you and your team. Go prep against Maryville, but take
Yeah.
the day off. You guys earned it. That was a really fun series to watch, a great series to watch, and best of luck in your round of 16 match. But for everybody else, we're gonna kick it to a short break before we pick up with our second series of the day. Don't go anywhere.